consistent as we can, trying to get that rhythm to be as slow as you can a little bit. We don't want the horse to get fast. And the goal is probably slow. Slow is a good thing. Slow is sort of an absence of energy in your horse. An absence of energy in your horse, I think, is going to be a good thing. All right, so as you guys are going around, just trying to keep things very simple. Jill, also, when it comes to the roundness that you're working with, I think sometimes that roundness can almost complicate things a little bit when we start to jump. And one of the things that I think that you always need to do in teaching young horses to jump is make sure that you're controlling the horse well without distracting them. And sometimes with young horses, and I know that you've done a bit with this horse on the flat, but sometimes when riders are trying to introduce the roundness to a horse and introduce jumping, it's hard for the horse to continue to think about the jump and continue to be forward thinking in their mind as they are sort of being dictated to by the rider. So when we start to jump, I'll almost ask you to allow the horse to carry itself in a little bit more of a natural frame. I'm a big believer in that natural frame, and I think it's a really funny thing. For our young horses, and we actually start our young horses jumping at the age of 2. Basically, if we can get on them and we can somehow manage to stay on them from that end of the ring to that end of the ring down there, we jump. And it's because it is what these horses are going to do for a living for us, and the sooner we start to expose them to the jumping, and when we jump combinations, we jump flowers, we jump boxes, we jump everything virtually within the first week that we can get on these horses. And it's all tiny, tiny, tiny little jumps. And I know that you said that you like to jump once the horses are broke and well schooled, and you've got to go one way or the other. Either you've got to kind of do it our way, or you go completely the other way. And it's wonderful when you have, say, a 6-year-old that has a couple of years of experience under its belt on the flat.
Her camera doesn't zoom in, movie camera, I don't think.
So I do think.
No, so I think as long as she can hear, she can't get mad. She wants to see if she's doing anything wrong.
A little more constructive here. That whole busyness thing, as I was just saying to Jill also, just talking about trying to keep things really, really simple, uncomplicated. Now here we have Catherine, who, Catherine, how old is your mule? 5. But been jumping for a little while, competing for a bit. You know, I've only ever worked with one other mule in my life, but you know, my feeling is animal behavioralism is animal behavioralism. And I don't really care whether we're talking about training dogs, training horses, training mules. It's all the same thing a little bit. And you know, there could be some unique traits amongst different breeds, and certainly donkeys, mules have a reputation for possibly being a little bit stubborn at times, but I don't know that the way that you deal with that is any different than what you would with a horse. So Catherine was telling me before that she took the horse to Spruce Meadows, I'm not sure how long ago that was, and walked in the ring, and the horse basically stood there, deer in the headlights type of thing, and for 45 seconds, like a statue, before she finally got eliminated. But that happens, and that can happen with a horse as well. I've had it happen. So you see these guys just trying to, you know, familiarize the horses with the arena a little bit, trying to keep the horses very relaxed, so that when it comes time to jumping, when it comes time to start to jump, with all of these horses, the goal, and Tara, I want you to really listen to this. Your goal is to create and maintain a certain set of qualities in your horse's way of going. Basically, what you want to do, your goal is to set parameters for your horse. And the parameters are straight, balanced, and a consistent length of stride through the process of jumping the jump. Those are the parameters that you're going to set for your horse. All right, now, another thing that I feel, and this is one place where I'm quite different from a lot of people. Some people feel that when you head down to a jump, the worst thing that a horse can do is stop. And I disagree. I actually think the worst thing your horse can do is get quick and try to rush through the whole thing. And the reason that I don't mind horses stopping is that hesitation is a very natural part of digesting information for a horse. Slowing down is a good, healthy thing. And I also know that as horses become more experienced, they slow down less. So if we teach them from day 0 to be quick and fast over the top of a jump, what happens when they become less hesitant at the jumps? They get faster. So hesitation is a very normal part of the process with horses, and in my opinion should almost be allowed or even encouraged sometimes. So with a young horse, I'll always give them sort of one free shot at a jump. They can stop one time, and then the expectation is the next time they should jump the jump. When they stop the first time, I won't necessarily reward them for stopping. I'm not going to reach up and pet the horse unless they're panicked, and Tara's horse today could be a bit panicked. It already looks like it's well and truly out of its element. But I wouldn't pat it necessarily for stopping. I'd pat it to try to get it to relax a little more. Now, if your horses go down to the jump the second time and stop, then there needs to be a little bit of a disincentive for that. Just a little tap of the crop is usually just enough, and the more defiant the horse becomes, the more aggressively you're going to correct that defiance. So, and always making sure that it's appropriate. For some horses, possibly Tara's horse, who's quite a forward-thinking horse, if it doesn't want to jump the jump, it's going to be evasive probably more through crookedness than it is through hesitation. Whereas this horse here may get to the jumps and back off a little bit. So it's really just about understanding the individuals and trying to work towards that consistency. And I talked about this last night. One of the mistakes that most riders make in teaching young horses, or riding any horse for that matter, is this myth that you need to release the horse over the jump. And the release is unnecessary. What is important is consistency. So I wouldn't release my leg off of a lazy horse at takeoff, and I wouldn't release my hand on an energetic horse either. All right, the goal is consistency, and that consistency is achieved through the communication with your horse through the hand and the leg. And of course, the voice is used to try to reinforce that, making sure that we're using all of our aids, our hand, leg, seat, voice, center of balance, and eyes, all to try to generate that consistency that we're looking for. It's good for you to hear this, even though I know that your horse is so overqualified for this section. It's still good for you to hear some of this, and it'll be good for these guys to actually maybe see one of the three of you make it over some of these jumps. All right, so your horse is, I'm nervous for you today. And I'm not nervous for your safety necessarily, but this is going to be hard. Your horse is very anxious, hard for you to actually get it to canter on the correct lead the whole way around the ring with any sort of consistency. I would consider putting a standing martingale on this horse. I'm a big fan of standing martingales.
What's that?
Just because they create a boundary for the horse. They set a parameter. That's one of my things a little bit with young horses. They set a parameter without necessarily the rider having anything to do with that parameter. And certain horses know that the only way that that running martingale is going to affect it is if you're pulling on the reins. So that's a parameter that does come back to you. Even though the martingale itself is a set thing that doesn't have anything to do with you, the contact with the horse's mouth is set by you. All that does is alter the direction of that contact a little bit. Draw reins, very much the horses understand that the rider's in control of it, whereas a standing martingale would just maybe help with some of that head flipping that this horse is doing. All right, let's jump over a jump. Good luck. You'll be fine. You know, and like I said, if your horse goes down there and stops, and you can, I don't know if you guys can all see, this is a very little jump. Basically, it's a pile of poles that we have sitting over here. Just a good place to start. And I know, like I said, you're well overqualified for this, but I still think that there could be possibly some inconsistencies that I can see very early on that we can start to talk about a little bit too. And I'm very, very, very particular about that consistency. I, as a rule, don't trot to jumps. And I talked about this last night. Talked about it because if you trot to a jump and your horse canters after the jump, by definition, consistency is not possible. So consistency is everything for me. Okay, so we will canter to this. If your horse is back off, make sure that each trot stride, as you get closer to the jump, is slower than the one before. You guys all know that, in general, horses will tend to accelerate through the process of jumping a jump rather than decelerate. So the one thing we want to make sure that we don't do is encourage them to get quick. So if your horses trot anywhere in the last 6 or 8 strides in front of the jump, continue with the trot with a progressive decrease through the process. All right? Left lead canter over the jump. I'm going to try to get done a bit earlier today, so if you guys have any questions, I'll try to answer some of your questions. But yesterday, I'm very naughty. I always run over time.
He's very naughty.
So you guys can follow him behind. Yep, that's lovely. But remember, this mule has done quite a bit too. But Catherine's got a lovely position, very nice, soft way about her, very quiet rider. Yep, that's nice. Terrific. Yeah, great. Phew. That's a relief. Good. Pair it back to the walk for a second.
He seems like he's pretty, he's an energetic.
Catherine, the only thing I would say there is you're approaching the jump and your horse, mule, I'm going to call it a horse, because that's so ingrained in my mind, that's what I always call him. As your horse gets closer to the jump, I know that you're recognizing that you need to maybe just be a little bit restrictive. Use your center of balance to reinforce it a little bit. So as you feel that the horse is just getting there and getting a little aggressive, just rock your shoulders back just a little bit rather than trying to do it like that. One is it's weak, and if this horse actually gets strong, you're not going to be able to control it well enough by using just your arm alone. And we talked about this a little bit last night, equitation for the sake of functionality. And the other thing I just mentioned is that center of balance is one of the 6 basic natural aids that we have, and you want to make sure that that center of balance is working the right way. You're pushing the horse back into the canter in that last stride. So, canter, the horse breaks back to the trot, stay at the trot, remembering each stride is progressively slower. So, I'm just crazy about that quickness. And it's a funny thing, I hate quickness in horses. I hate it, but I don't mind quick horses. And it sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. I admire the motive. I just disagree with the method. So when you think about it, there's a lot of horses in the world that try pretty hard not to jump the jumps. And having a horse that's quick, they're pretty keen to jump it and get it over with. So, you have to admire the initiative that the horse has to jump the jump. I just don't like the method, that quickness. So anyway, that's why I'm so careful about making sure that you keep those parameters set for your horse. And the first jump was a good jump. Okay, let's just try that again. So on the approach, Catherine, I'm quite happy for your upper body to be forward until you feel the need to be just a little bit more restrictive. So just keep going forward, longer stride, longer stride, longer stride. One of the things that Catherine had talked to me about earlier was the fact that this mule doesn't have a very big stride. So one of the mistakes that riders make a lot of times is that they will work on the flat with one set of parameters that maybe doesn't have a lot of application to the jumping that they are going to do. And then, of course, when they start to jump, they try to create a completely different way of going. So I think it's very important to make sure that the flat work that you're doing is applicable to the jumping that you intend to do. Tara, now just stay straighter after the jump as well. Don't cut the turn like that, because what will happen is your horse will start to anticipate that turn more and more after the jump. So ride straight right down to the end of the arena. Yeah, that's good. That's good, Catherine. Trot, 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 trot. So you start, Jill, that time you start to lose the horse to the outside a little bit, and the horse, it's that inconsistency that I'm trying to get rid of. So let's go, just stick, okay, here, let's grab one of these rails and just like that. Actually, why don't we come back the other direction, on the right lead over this.
What was she doing there? She just pointed there. Oh, I thought she did something.
All right, just thinking about that consistency. Yeah, and also remembering that the voice is a really important part of the whole process as well. Yep, remember, Jill, all of that little bit of hesitation, which that was very genuine what the horse did that time, is a wonderful thing. You know, that's self-preservation. That's self-preservation at work. And, you know, Jill, your horse has that, almost that tiny little bit of hesitant self-preservation. Tara's horse doesn't have that. So Tara's got to work very hard to try to encourage the little glimpses of that self-preservation whenever it does occur. Yeah, that's lovely. Very good. Okay, you guys hang on for a second. Good. So every now and again, you'll get one of these sort of argumentative horses. Just walk for a second. And your horse is not argumentative, by the way. But you'll get an argumentative horse that will pick up the wrong lead or something like that just to piss you off. And the thing that you don't want to do is get distracted. Your job is to try to control the horse, not the other way around. And a little bit what can happen is that riders can micromanage things a little bit too much, and they'll lose sight of the big picture. The big picture is that we want to just get over this jump as close to maintaining our parameters as we can. And if the horse starts to pick up the wrong lead, not that you've done this, but I know that this can happen, riders will circle trying to get the correct lead. The horse is controlling the rider at that stage, so we just have to keep that big picture in mind. So the ideal thing is to pick up the right lead canter, maintain consistency and the balance and straightness, the lead, length of stride, as well as we can. And if those things start to deviate, then we just have to prioritize a little bit. Straightness, consistency, balance, all of those things sort of ideally happen simultaneously. I don't really know which of those things I would prioritize as highest. Possibly in my mind, straightness would be the number one thing. My feeling is if you have a horse that gets crooked and starts to hesitate and go forward, your life is vastly more complicated. If you have a horse that basically stays straight, then the hesitation that you might have a little bit, or the quickness that you have, if your horse is basically straight, then those issues are way more simple to deal with. Okay, we'll go straight across there, then we'll come back on the left lead again. So, as we start to raise this jump up, you do not need to change a thing. You certainly don't, you know that. And you're the experienced one here, you know that with your horse you don't need to change a thing either.
Has Tara ever jumped over that? I don't think Tara's ever jumped that high of a fence yet, has she? With Link?
Stride or the impulsion needs to change at all. Little more cantering, little more. Yeah, that's good. Lovely position. A very, very nice position over top of the jump. That's really good. You'd probably still just quite vastly understrided. You know, I think you're probably on a 9-foot stride, maybe a 10-foot stride, and you still need to just keep working towards that 12-foot stride that you know that you need. As I was saying last night, I still talk in terms of feet and inches. The numbers are just a little bit nicer, rounder number. Start talking about the length of a horse's stride at 3.6 meters, it gets very confusing sounding. 12-foot stride is quite simple. That's fine. Good. These horses are doing really well. Good. Excellent. Catherine, back to the walk. That's great. Tara, one more time. Good job. Good. Yep, great. And back to the walk. Good. Your horse is a natural athlete, and the lead changes are there naturally. The horse does it virtually without you even thinking about it. That's why probably the lead that you start off on isn't that critical. And not that leads aren't important. I think leads are immensely important. But this horse is a real athlete, so you don't have to worry too much about that stuff. Whereas, you know, a less athletic horse, it would probably be something I'd be talking about quite a lot. Terrific. So far, good. And, you know, with both of you guys, where your horses are very unsure about what we're doing in here, give them a lot of reassurance. You know, pet them a lot and tell them that they're being very, very good, because they're being terrific so far. Okay, now, I want you to go right lead over that vertical and then across the diagonal over this line here. I walked this before. It walks in about 5 1/4 strides. But in this venue, there's so many things that you have to take into consideration. Footing's a little bit deep, going away from the in-gate, you know, very confining type of space here. And then the other thing that we've got to take into consideration is that this horse does not have a massive stride. So if you get 6 strides on this line, I'll be impressed. I could definitely see 7 happening. And just so, like I said, it's probably 5 1/4. So I want both of you guys also to count the number of strides that you do. Are you good at counting strides? Okay. It's actually quite an important thing, just so that you have a reference for your horse's length of stride. A little aggressive looking, yeah, not so good. You know, that's the nature of this horse, mule a little bit, it's that aggressiveness. Yeah, that's lovely, good. Not so straight on landing though. So there's good initiative that a horse can have, and there's bad initiative. Good initiative is as a horse approaches a jump, they look at the jump, they study the jump, and they adjust their stride a little bit to make the takeoff spot work out the right way. That's good initiative. Bad initiative is initiative that interferes with your ability to make a good takeoff spot happen. All right, so this mule has some bad initiative in front of the jump, and it wants to take over a little bit. And we saw with that colored horse last night, we also saw a horse that maybe had a little bit of bad initiative. 1 minute it was getting to the jump and sort of switching off, and then the next minute was almost dragging the rider down to the jumps. After the jump, there is no such thing as good initiative on the horse's part. When they land after a jump, they should be totally submissive and completely wait to be told what to do. Where your horse wants to landing a little quick, duck to the inside a little bit, yours will want to do the same thing, maybe be a little quick and certainly cut the turns. But you just got to make sure that you're not encouraging it too. Okay, so brings us to you two guys here. Now, I'm very particular about the way we introduce lines to a young horse. I happen to think that these two jumps are far enough away from each other where your horses won't associate that jump with this jump here. The more experienced a horse becomes, the further ahead they'll start to look. They start to plan ahead a little bit more. Your horse, quite possibly, would jump into this in and out and not recognize that there's a second part until it lands. But that's real inexperience. Some horses will plan as far as 6 strides away, but not much more than that. So, all that said, as your horses approach this line, they will only really be thinking about the first part of the line. So a lot of times I'll say to riders that when we talk about a line of jumps like this, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So on a line like this, what complicates this line is not just 3 jumps, but the entirety of the line as well. So that entirety is the thing that will blow most horses' minds. And that's why I'm very particular about how we introduce lines to a young horse. So what I want you to do is jump over that vertical. Maybe jump a little bit inside to outside over that vertical over there. I want you to turn inside of this vertical, and jump over that oxer by itself. And I will adjust them a little bit. Go across the diagonal, and then do the 2 jumps on the line. All right, where the idea is that by the time you go to do this whole line, you've already jumped this jump. So now we've taken one of those variables out of the difficulty of the line, which is the horse having to process the second part of the line and spook at it and worry about it. So the entirety of the line isn't really that big of a deal for the horse. All right, so it's just breaking a line down into manageable psychological pieces for the horse so that they're not overwhelmed by the entirety. 6 strides is my defining number. When you're inside of 6 strides away from a jump, stay at the trot. If you're outside of 6 strides, which you won't be on this line, if you're outside of 6 strides, then you can go ahead and try to push the horse back into the canter. And the reason 6 strides is my magic number, and this is actually quite an important thing, is that that's roughly where the horse will lock on a jump, is no more than 6 strides in front of the jump. So if anywhere in the last 6 strides, a rider habitually is pushing the horse from trot to canter, we will create a quick horse. So I know it's not a habit, but it is a little bit, because this horse is going to get to the jumps, back off and hesitate a little bit. And if you're always pushing the horse back into the canter, then we're going to create that quickness that I said that I hate so much. Okay, so